Hello, I'm Seth Grossman for libertyandprosperity.com. We're a group of about 200 folks who live in and around Atlantic City who get together once a week and we talk about stuff. We talk about the issues of the day and we talk about them openly and honestly. We give our opinions and sometimes we're right. A lot of times we're wrong and we get corrected by others in the group. And this is a process that Benjamin Franklin over there talked about 300 years ago. He also had a regular discussion group of ordinary people, and he found out that because Americans like him did that, ordinary Americans were better informed on most issues than the best educated elites of Europe. And the reason was simple, because we learn from each other. He said when different opinions collide, sparks fly out, and political light is obtained. And that's what we do every week. And that's why many times, if you follow what we post on our libertyandprosperity.com website, you'll find out that we're better informed and way ahead of the issues as compared to some of our most expensive, highly trained experts in the military and industry and political world. But in any case, let's talk about climate change. And let's talk about so-called green energy. Don't be fooled. Follow the real science on these topics. And by the way, I think I'm qualified, like most Americans my age, are qualified to talk about science. Because since the days of Benjamin Franklin, Americans have been obsessed, fascinated with science. Americans were always curious, wanting to know where things came from, how things work, how to fix things. Growing up in the Sputnik generation, the rocket generation, the most popular magazines in high school included Popular Science and Popular Mechanics magazines, and we were trying to figure things out all the time. Now, when we apply that real science to climate change, we have to understand that climate has been changing for billions of years, ever since the Earth was formed. And we figured that out not just from books, but from observation. Back in my elementary school, Richmond Avenue School in Atlantic City in the 1950s, the school was heated by coal. So you had big piles of Pennsylvania coal piled up in the schoolyard. And as kids, we'd play with that coal and we knew it was fossil fuel because we could look at the fossils and play with the fossils. That Pennsylvania coal had imprints of ferns and palm trees and other tropical plants and tropical insects that could not possibly exist in the Pennsylvania we see today. So we knew that the climate had been much warmer than it is today in Pennsylvania millions of years ago when that coal was formed. And we also know that the Earth has been getting warmer for the past 10,000 years because we know that here in New Jersey we used to have something called the Ice Age. We know that most of New Jersey was covered by giant sheets of ice. We know that because we see the rocks that those ice sheets pushed around when we drive up in North Jersey. And we also know that the Atlantic City beaches, the reason we have that much better sand up here than almost any other beach in the world is because we know that those giant glaciers or ice sheets ground up those rocks and drag the sand, the ground up rocks, to what is now our beach about 10,000 years ago. And then, of course, we have the beaches when that stuff melted. So basically, global warming has been going on for at least 10,000 years. And, of course, we all know the Ice Age, right? Don't our kids know about woolly mammoths and saber-toothed tigers and all those Ice Age animals that got stuck in the tar pits at La Brea in Los Angeles? Well, I wonder if they do. And if I wonder if they're taught that, gee, 10,000 years ago, this area was covered with ice. Now the ice is gone. I wonder what caused that warming 10,000 years ago. It certainly wasn't our automobiles, right? So how much of the climate change, if there is global warming going on today, how much is caused by people and cars and our fossil fuels? How much would have happened anyway? We should be asking those questions. And many scientists do ask those questions, like Michael Schellenberger, who spoke at the Ocean City Music Pier last summer, and he explained that probably there is some man-made global warming in this mix, but he said it's manageable and we can fix it pretty quickly. And of course, Michael Schellenberger said that probably the easiest way to fix it is by adopting nuclear energy, which is very safe, safer than the fuels we use now. I mean, if you compare how many people got hurt or killed in nuclear accidents, estimate how many people get killed from fossil fuel, from gas or oil explosions, or how many people will probably get killed or injured if we put 100 wind turbines 16 miles out in the ocean. So basically, nuclear energy is a lot safer, and we know it works because France really has its electric grid is powered by nuclear energy, and France is self-sufficient in energy. Meanwhile, Germany and Denmark, which do not have nuclear power and instead rely on wind and solar, are hopelessly dependent on France for their nuclear energy when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine, and because of how inefficient wind and solar energy are. So the Germans and the Danes, they have to pay a fortune for nuclear power from France, and even worse, they're totally dependent on the Russians for a natural gas pipeline. So nuclear power has done France a lot of good, and wind and solar power have been absolute disasters in Germany and Denmark. So why are we following the failures of Europe and not the success? So of course, if you follow the science, you'll know why wind and solar energy. You'll know why wind and solar energy just don't work. See, wind and solar energy are very weak. What we learned in basic 8th grade science is that you don't create electricity. You simply turn energy from one form to another. So therefore, if the sun is not warm enough to thaw out a slice of frozen pizza in 5 minutes, if you convert that energy from the sun into electricity, the electricity is going to be just as weak or even weaker than the warmth of the sun coming in at that time. So needless to say, if the sun could just barely thaw out a slice of pizza in 20 minutes, it's not going to have enough energy to power a washing machine or a dishwasher or power any equipment in industry. So it's just weak. It's also unreliable. The wind blows, the wind doesn't blow, the sun comes out, a cloud goes by, the sun stops, the energy stops. So that's a reality. And in Atlantic City, we've seen many days when the wind didn't blow at all, and those 5 wind turbines in Atlantic City were just standing still. And as someone who has a sailboat, I know the feeling. In the heat of the summer, when you need electricity for air conditioning more than ever, my sailboat would be stuck with no wind whatsoever. And if I didn't power up that little motor, I'd probably have the Gulf Stream take me over to France. But it's unreliable. But it's even worse, solar energy can't be stored. That's the big problem. You can't store it. The batteries you would have to create to store that quantity of energy, it's just inconceivable. The best scientists in the world, from Thomas Edison 100 years ago to now, haven't figured out how to do it. You can't store it, and that means that since the electric grid needs the same amount of electricity in the grid all the time, so when you plug in your toaster oven, it has to have 210 volts or 110 volts and 60 amps all the time. If it doesn't have that same amount of power, your appliances would burn out, factory equipment would burn out, and if you're on a hospital on a ventilator, that couldn't function. So you need the same quantity of electricity all the time, which means when the wind stops blowing or when a cloud goes by or when it gets to be night, you need fossil fuel to power up backup generators to keep the power supply even. And since you never know when the wind's going to stop, or you don't know when the cloud's going to go by, those fossil fuels and those backup generators have to be working all the time. So you'd like to know how much fossil fuel is wasted on all those backup generators, and you'll notice that the government and the scientists and all those green energy proponents, they never tell you. In fact, they go out of their way to make sure you don't find out by having these complicated system of credits where you get paid top dollar for electricity you produce, whether it's needed or not, because very often the backup generators are producing all the power you need. So every ounce or every bit of green energy produced when the wind is blowing, it's not used. They'd have to dump it because if they didn't dump it, it would blow up the grid. So climate alarmists are wrong. They're making things worse. They benefit nobody but the communist regime in China, the big corporations who make a lot of money from all the government subsidies, the big government politicians, the bureaucrats, and the contractors. That's who's benefiting. Back in my day, we had a saying, who benefits? Cui bono in Latin, C-U-I-B-O-N-O. It means, so if all these people are telling you that the oceans are going to flood Atlantic City and the hurricanes are more dangerous than ever, first of all, if the people are so worried about the danger of floods, why is the most expensive property in New Jersey the property that's closest to the ocean, the closest to the bay? Obviously, if people thought their property was going to wash away in 10 years, they wouldn't spend $2 million for a vacant lot in Longport to build a house. But in any case, follow the money. You'll see who's lying to you. You'll see why they're lying to you. And so I'm asking you on behalf of the 200 of us at libertyandprosperity.com, help us get these liars, these crooks, and their fake science out of our public schools, out of our colleges and government. Learn more at libertyandprosperity.com and help us reach more people. Donate to our group online or send a check to 453 Shore Road in Summers Point. Join us at our weekly breakfast in Summers Point, New Jersey. That's libertyandprosperity.com. Thank you.